Good morning. I'm Denise Dryden. I do these weekly Sunday morning videos, and this morning I'm a bit late. Well, it's been an interesting sort of series of dramas as I'm talking about how to disconnect our observation skills from our judgment. So over the last 5 years, I've done an enormous amount of videos. I think there's like 250 of them on each of my social media channels. And each of them, I came at it from a coach's perspective, which is, here's an issue, how are we going to deal with it? And here's some tools to sort of approach how to make those deep changes, right? So when we have these tools, they're there. I don't want to repeat myself over and over again. So what I've noticed that I started doing once I got back to Montana about 4 months ago is taking sort of more of the subtleties of the tools and fleshing out what they look like on an energetic level, what they look like when we make these changes, these substantial changes, right? So, you know, these are subtle shifts of energy, and so I want to start with the definitions because I think they always help. When we look at observation, you know, what does it mean to have an observation of something? You know, it's an active searching for information. It's when we sort of focus on a primary person, a thing, a place, and we watch it, right? It employs all of our senses. It is something that we notice. It's when our perception, our perceiving just takes off and really like expands, right? And it's when we are the constant student, the absolute constant student. So it's sort of a superpower, I think, and I've trained over the years in the videos that this is a superpower. That we build them, that we honor them, and that we access these, right? So I've got a cat scratching on the door outside who's gone in and out 6 times since 10 o'clock, which is why I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to ignore her, yet observe her. So when we observe, not just observant, but when we observe, we become aware of careful and directed focus. Like, how am I going to put my focus in? Where do I want that to go right now? And we watch attentively. We make a systematic and scientific sort of, yep, that's different, that's the same. Oh, that's interesting. So we collect data and we compile this data, which is what makes us really observant, right? And then, you know, to also observe something is to comply or conform to rites, rituals, religions, practices that other people or you know, state rules like what we're doing right now, a lot of us are complying, right? Or a lot of people are complying. I wouldn't put myself in that position. When we're observant, we're watchful, we're attentive. We pay really close attention to details. We look for opportunities, but we also look for danger. And we're quick to notice any subtle differences, and we use all of our multiple intelligences in order to notice what we notice. So this is a very important tool that resides within energetically sensitive, highly sensitive people, HSPs, and empaths, is that their awareness, their attention to details, their attentiveness, their observation skills are off the charts. So when I was working in the therapeutic industry and we were creating descriptions of kids in program at that time, especially kids who struggled with anxiety, with high levels of sensitivity, what we saw over and over again was that they had an enormous, it would say, is your child observant? And the parents would be like, oh yeah. It was a word that they sort of locked in on and it made sense to them. And I said, are you observant? And they would say, oh, I am, but he isn't, or I am, but she isn't. And it was super interesting to see how they sort of looked at the world once they came across the concept of observant. So it's when we focus on something, when we focus all of our senses and we open up, and we gather information, and it brings us deep awareness, and it brings us deep insights. So I want to also talk about this concept that when we're observant, we can pick up on subtleties that are not very safe, and they don't feel really good. So it's when we go into hypervigilance. We go into, I don't like this class, I don't like this teacher, I don't like this tone of voice. When mom uses this tone of voice, I need to get scared, right? So there's fear, there's vigilance, there's anxiety. And there's also sometimes this level of righteousness, which is, like I've been doing all of this and I don't like that. I don't like what I see over there. So it's super interesting how we pair our observation skills with judgment, which is this fits into the category of my opinion. I'm going to formulate my opinion based on what I see or based on the lens that I have of that situation. So our opinion is influenced by our education, by our politics, by our family, by our media, by our religions, by our major institutions. And we can build information in a lot of different ways. So what we want to do is pay attention to the lens that we're using when we're building information. And so when this lens has fear or this lens has reactivity, then it falls into the category of sort of that dualistic, this is right, that's wrong, this is good, that is bad. And I think that we have to sort of drive a wedge in between that and start to look at how are these observation skills really, really strong, and how do I watch what tool I'm using to gather information. So when I went to mystery school, back in 2011, 10 years ago, I learned that when I'm in judgment or when we are in judgment, the pathway out is compassion. So compassion, judgment. So when you catch yourself being critical, judging somebody for something that they're wearing, they're doing, they're this or they're that, if you counterbalance that with compassion, it softens everything out, right? So it's an energetic balancing and it provides neutrality, and we step forward in compassion. So we're choosing to observe without choosing a version or a side. And this is really hard, challenging, subtle work. It's like, how am I looking at this? Oh, wow, I'm looking at it through a lens that's super frustrated right now, super angry. Okay, so I'm going to go through, I have 6 tips for you on how to sort of keep working on the subtlety of our building observation skills, but also releasing judgment. So number 1, get to know your observation skills. Go to public places. Like I love to sit in a coffee shop and I sit right at the front table and I watch everybody who comes in, and then I practice like, okay, so I'm just watching them. I'm not making an assumption. I'm not making any story up in my head. I'm just watching. I do the same thing out in nature. Sometimes it's really lovely to have a chair next to the window where you can watch outside all the time and sort of see, what are the leaves doing? What is the weather doing? What's the reaction to that? So we're looking for nuances that stand out, things that you can notice and observe. So the first thing is just get out there and start observing, right? Second is notice the story you have in your head about everything you see. Are you harsh? Are you judgy? Are you looking at their clothes, their hair, their size, their, what are you doing when you're looking at them? Or are you looking at them through the lens of being kind, like, oh, look at that. That's so sweet. Supportive, curious. What do you say? What does your inner voice do? That's the most important part. What does your inner voice do when you're in the midst of all of this? So number 3 is that you notice the changes in what you notice based on your moods, right? So you notice your own lens. When you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're frustrated. Like this is where we see road rage, right? I am frustrated, I'm stressed, and getting to and from work is really challenging. So watch your body, watch your energy system. In grocery lines, where else does it show up? And then watch when you're rested, when you're happy, when you're confident, when you're content, when you have joy in your body, okay? So notice the changes based on your moods. That's the most important thing, okay? Number 4, notice when you are open and curious and collecting. Notice when it's like I can relax my system and open it up. I like to look at it like it's a flower that's open. And when I'm collecting data, this is what it looks like. I've got the Osho 3 of Wands. And what I like about her is that she's noticing what she's doing in relationship with nature. So, whatever she's seeing in nature, she's feeling herself. It's where the Empress energy goes into fire, which is I'm in relationship with everything, right? You know, what do you do when are you curious, or are you open, or are you overstimulated and overwhelmed, right? Number 5, this is where we step into self-ownership. If we don't cross that line into self-ownership, which is, oh, my mood is affecting this, my lens is out of whack, something about what I'm doing can be changed, we step into self-ownership, which is change and growth. So this is where we step into choice, which is I get to choose. Am I being judgmental, or do I get to choose compassion? Am I choosing to calm down the overwhelm? Am I choosing not to take my hunger or my mood out on somebody else? And am I open and compassionate? And then what happens is we have this level of opportunity, which is, wow, when I choose something different, I see new things. I feel new things. I experience new things. And when I experience them, they change my perspectives. They change the way that I interact in the world, okay? So this self-ownership is where we cross the line from following and obeying into, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I want to create, and I am actively creating that within myself so that I see it more in the world. Number 6 is when we shift out of judgment. Things that I use to shift out of judgment is that I have to settle my emotions. I have to breathe. I have to expand. I have to soften. I have to seek a compassionate story, like I wonder what she's like when she's home. I wonder whether she drinks coffee or tea. And I can come up with something that's really soft and wonderful. When I'm smiling, when I'm softened, I watch how eye contact and interaction gets much softer. When I'm tense and when I'm stiff and I'm closed up inside, no one really steps in. And so what I noticed is my observation skills tell me how I am in the world, because the outer world is showing me at all times, whether it's our kids, whether it's our spouse, whether it's our work environment, that how they react to us is how we feel within ourselves. So when we can disconnect judgment, where we are critical, where we are harsh, from the way that we interact, we notice that everything in the world softens. So this is kind of stuff, that these subtle tweakings that I've been doing a lot more of in my coaching. If you'd like some support with that, or you want to chat, you can always find me on DeniseDryden.com. And of course, subscribe to any of these vehicles that you're watching on, because I do these once a week, and it's important for you to be able to find them if you're interested, okay? Have a great Sunday, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.